Greetings from sunny South Florida and rainy South Florida. My name is Angelo DiStefano. My friends who've known me for a long time know me as Guido. Although the ones that know me as Guido, for the most part, never knew I had or grew up with cystic fibrosis. And so this video, primarily I'm making this for the benefit of my CF sisters and brothers, but also for others to get a little glimpse into what we sometimes refer to as the invisible disease. Partly the reason why it's CF, I'm going to show you a glimpse today of what it takes for us to get out and into the public and to do things and to be functional, so that when you see us, we look much better than we do often at home and after we've cleared our lungs out and done therapies, so that we can be get out and be functional. We do a variety of respiratory therapies or inhalation therapies. These are 4 different medications that I do through my nebulizer at least twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And in between the therapies, I start out actually before the therapies and in between the meds, I do what I just, for lack of better terms, I call a breathing exercise, a deep breathing exercise, for the express purpose of getting the congestion to move. So for those of you who are not familiar with CF, one of the major problems that most of us have is a thick, sticky mucus that builds up in the lungs instead of the normal fluids in the lungs that move up and out of the lungs to get rid of debris and dust from the air and bacteria and any other kind of pollutants that get into our lungs. In the CF lungs, that fluid gets very sticky, and so instead of moving up, it tends to hang out in the lungs and sit there, and instead of cleaning things out of the lungs, it collects dust, debris, bacteria, yeast, mold, whatever it is, and becomes a breeding ground for infection. And over time, that infection causes scarring of the lung tissue, becomes fibrotic, hence the name cystic fibrosis. And it causes a lung function to diminish over the years. Many don't live into later adulthood, but here I am in my 50s, praise the Lord, and I am 8 weeks past my 3rd adult stem cell treatment. So many of you have been reading about my treatments on Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook and also on my website or blog, angelodistefano.com. That's ANGELODISTEFANO.com, angelodistefano.com. So again, the primary purpose for this video is to teach other CF warriors this breathing exercise that I learned about a decade ago, and it was a life changer for me. And the second purpose, again, for outsiders to get a glimpse into what we go through on a daily basis as cystic fibrosis warriors. Now, about 10 years ago, I was having some serious problems with a lack of air movement in the lower part of my lungs. And I was getting seriously backed up with carbon dioxide. So I was getting the results of CO2 poisoning, massive headaches, a brain fog. I just had lack of clarity of thought, really difficulty breathing. And when you can't get the CO2 out, there's just no room for O2, for oxygen to come in. And what I learned from this therapist at that time was that the gas exchange in the lungs, most of it takes place in the lower third of the lungs. So that means oxygen coming into the lungs and being transfused from the lungs into the bloodstream. And the reverse of that, the CO2 coming out of the bloodstream, being pulled out as a toxin and back into the lungs for us to exhale. Most of that process happens in the lower third of the lungs. So if you find through congestion and other problems that you're not getting a lot of air movement in the lower part of the lungs, that's a critical problem, and you need to be able to deal with that on an ongoing daily basis. And all the medications, everything that they were doing, nothing was working. The doctors didn't tell me how to handle this right, most of the therapists. And one day, a therapist named Charles, never forget his name because of him, he came in and he said, "We're going to get that air movement in the bottom of your lungs." And I says, I don't know how. No one else has been able to do it. I'm really struggling here. And he showed me something. And most of you CF patients actually already know how to do this. If you don't already know what I'm about to show you, you really need to pay attention. But because of the pulmonary functions test that we do, you already kind of know how to do this. So when you go to that test for the FEV1, the respirometry test, and they're getting you to breathe out, and then you inhale deep and breathe out as far as you can to the bottom of your lungs. That's essentially the process. We've got to take that further and push really hard. So most of you guys are fighters, although there are some of you, I know I'm going to get comments on this. Some of you that'll post comments saying, oh yeah, I tried that, it doesn't work. Listen, don't whip out on me. This is serious stuff. If you want to take this seriously and get the CO2 out of your lungs and breathe easier, get the congestion out and be healthier, you've got to do this like an exercise, like your life depends on it, because it does, and it's a competition, and you can't afford to not win, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to be doing the breathing exercise, because people talk about a huffing and a puffing, and you can kind of describe it with words, but without seeing it, it's really hard to get to full effect. And I'm going to show you right now. This is the cup, my little spit cup, completely empty. By the end of a session of doing this kind of coughing, this is a little 3-ounce Dixie cup. I'll get this to about a third, maybe even a half full. So an ounce to an ounce and a half, I will cough up. Normal healthy person, if you get a little bronchitis, you can just do stuff like that. Stuff moves right up. It's easy. Because of the stickiness of the congestion in our lungs, it's really difficult for us to move this stuff up. So this is the exercise that Charles told me. Within 20 minutes, amazing, within 20 minutes of me doing this, we got air moving in the bottom of my lungs. I felt it. I felt life coming back into my body. The headaches literally started vanishing instantly. Clarity came back into my mind. The results were staggering. So this is our number one weapon against cystic fibrosis, and that's keeping your lungs as clear as possible, getting the congestion out. If all the other stuff you do, if you don't do this, none of that stuff really matters. You've got to get rid of the poison that's in our lungs, okay? And it's a constant battle. I do these breathing exercises minimum twice a day, sometimes 3 and even 4 times a day. If I'm doing something out and about and I get congestion and I have trouble breathing, I will excuse myself. I'll go to a bathroom. I'll go somewhere. I'll go in my car, whatever it takes. I'll get away and do this. And this is one of the reasons why, and there's many reasons, but this is, I believe, one of the reasons why this is what's called that invisible disease. Is if I'm not feeling well, I'm not going to get out of the house. And you're not going to see me on a day that I'm really struggling and not doing well. And for me to get out of the house, I've got to do my inhalers, the vest, the vibrating on the vest, the chest to move the congestion. And most importantly, I do the deep breathing exercises to clear my lungs out. That way I'm breathing better at my peak. I'm able to get out. I get more wind movement, which I don't have a lot right now. You may even hear it in me struggling in talking and breathing. And that way I'm able to get out and be more functional. And then people see me and think, oh, wow, you look great. You got energy. I can hear it in your voice, that kind of thing. Well, that happens because I work at it. And all of you guys, you CF Warriors, I'm sure you do the same, if not more than I do. But for the ones of you that are that have not learned about this, that's why I'm making this video, because you need to know about this breathing technique, okay? So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to show the whole video it takes to fill this up, because that's about 20, sometimes 30 minutes. But I just want to show you essentially the technique, okay? And it's kind of gross and disgusting, so the rest of you may want to tune out. But I'm going to start doing this huffing and the heavy breathing, okay? Remember, you got to push out to the bottom of the lungs, and when you feel you can't go, you've got to push hard, so hard, like exercising, that you'll actually start breaking out into sweat almost immediately. I'm in an air-conditioned room, but I'm going to be sweating here very shortly. And use these lower muscles in the chest and the diaphragm to try to push in the lower part of the lungs. Nothing feels like it's moving yet. And this is really hard. And this is where a lot of you are going to quit and say it doesn't work. And that's when you got to keep pushing. You'll have to take a breath, though, in between, depending on what your current lung function is. Now you even want to turn up your O2 airflow rate while you're doing this. It's beginning to move. It's just beginning. When you get at the bottom, you're out of breath. If you can, just keep pushing harder. You got to get to the very bottom of the lungs. Okay, you get the idea. I'm going to end the video now, because it's really more of the same now for the next 20 or 30 minutes. But this is what vital, critical to getting the congestion out and keeping the lungs as clear as you can, to minimize the need for a lot more antibiotics. Because you want the antibiotics when you need them, but overuse of antibiotics is what contributes to things like MRSA getting stronger, coming back, and other strains of the bacteria that become resistant to the drugs. So, happy coughing. Have a great day. It's September, and as time goes on, I'll make other videos and keep you updated.